I still don't have theme music, so you're just gonna have to deal. Welcome to the third, I lose track, the third podcast for the Sacrament game, where we talk about things that we're talking about. We answer questions and we dive deep into what it is that we're working on creating here. Last week, we went over primary resource names, the differences between each of the role, essentially. I posted the conversation up, as you can see, primary resource names on the list. And then we also went over player targeting mechanics. That's on there somewhere right below it. What else we got? Role players. Okay. And just for those of you that are curious about the website, this one specifically, I like this one. Just as proof that people do post concerns. They have some concerns about some raid sizes comparatively, and we went on to explain that, you know, if you create a solid game, raid size within reason is not going to be a very major issue. So we're not going to be doing 8-player raids because we're worried about raid size. It's not happening. Anyways, okay, so this week's questions. Ship combat. So ship combat is something that we do have planned for the game. There's no question about it. We've absolutely got it planned for the game. Unless something crazy comes up and that changes, it is absolutely planned for the game. The thing about it is right now it's planned for the first expansion. There's an entire story going on where the ship combat is highly involved in that. So we've seen a lot of people recently talking about ship combat. We see how successful, how fluid ArcAge's ship combat is. And so we thought we'd put it out there. And, you know, it's a reasonable question to ask. Do we think that the players want ship combat sooner than the first expansion? If we don't launch with ship combat in our game, is it going to fail? The answer is no, it's not going to fail. And our thoughts are that if we launch with ship combat, the ship combat just won't be very fulfilling. Not that it'll be broken, but the purpose, the meaning behind it is all hidden away in the first expansion. And we can't go about pushing that meaning forward without kind of, well, killing the story of the live launch game. So when it comes to the ship combat, yes, we absolutely want to see what people think. And there are some really good opinions on it so far. One of them I absolutely agree with, and that is check down here. So the poll is include ship combat with launch. One person says yes, don't know who it is. One person said I don't care, that was me. And the other one said no, let it come with the first expansion. That likely should have been my actual choice because that's what I really want, but I just put I don't care because if it absolutely came down to it, we would find a way to make it work. I would prefer to wait so that we're not trying to force a story that just isn't there and then take away from the first expansion. I don't want that, but so check here says, I'm all for naval PvP. However, I have pretty high hopes after experiencing AA's both water physics and ship physics. AA's, for those of you who don't know, is ArcAge. Free-to-play game, actually. You can go and pick it up and try out some ship combat if you've never experienced it. So anything that can compare or beat that standard is something that I can guarantee I would sink hundreds and hundreds of hours in. I love it. Absolutely love it. This is also all maybe talk, but games that introduce large-scale PvP elements that don't have, I'm editing you while I go, a reason to pull people into other than PvP honestly end up dying off. If it is released with launch, finding a reason and way to get people to keep going back on the water, I feel should be one of the highest priorities if implemented. I agree. AA's personal way of doing this was trade packs and privateering. AA had their system for it. We have our own. If it becomes some overwhelming number where we're looking at, you know, 80% of people that want to play this game, people that are into this game, are voting yes, we want it during launch, that's a pretty staggering number, absolutely overwhelming. So the real partial challenge, I mean, I can literally come up with a way to do it right off the top of my head right now. But the only real challenge at that point is to give it a purpose, a reason to exist, for people to come back. Like he says, without a reason, it's nice to be on the ship, and it's cool to enjoy the water and experience some land masses that you may or may not have access to yet. But once you see it all, you're kind of done. And how many hours towards that type of exploration is there really? Fighting people for no reason really isn't as fun as some games might try to sell you on. There needs to be a purpose. It's like PvEing for no reason or crafting for no reason. Nobody wants no reason. People have a reason why they want to go and master these things. People have a reason they have their jobs. Some do it out of love, some for money, some to get the hell out of the house. I know retirees who pick up a second and third job just because it gets them out of the house for a few hours a day. Not that they don't love their spouse, or even if they have a spouse, just it's something to do. So there has to be a purpose. Everything we do in life as human beings is purpose driven. There's nothing that's, hey, why did you do that? I don't know. My kids say that and I look at them like they're stupid. Seriously? No. So ship combat, yes or no? This is absolutely a big thing. And when I say big thing, what I mean is, like he said, the water physics are important. The combat physics of the ships are important. What other capabilities are people going to be able to board other ships while they're in combat? What is overall combat looking like? Are we talking about people being able to repair ships? I mean, there's a lot of questions that go into this. How big are our ships? Are they little, I don't know, canoes, essentially? Are they big sails? Is there going to have to be a crew to work the cannons, to work the sails, to work the mast? There's a lot of information that goes into this. And so it becomes, in and of itself, just in concept creation alone, it becomes a very big project. And it's something that we are working on the concepts for, but it's not something that we're working on the concepts for with the same type of priority as something that's coming out in live launch. So we would need to dedicate a little bit more time to that project. The real length, the greatest amount of time on this is going to be when it comes down to the creation of the entire system. So we can sit here all day and say, we want a game where, pink panthers are capable of flying and they fly around and shit rainbows and drop gummy drops. And if you eat the gummy drops, you become a friend of the panthers. But what is the reality of that happening? What is the reality of a developer that can actually make that happen? Now, that's kind of a simple thing. Faction gumdrops, that's simple as hell. So it's probably a really poor example of a concept where you can create the concept, but then the developers can't really create the game itself. But it's not stoops. It's not something that I lost my train of thought. Don't read the text. Landon, don't read the text. They will let me know in TeamSpeak if there's a problem with the feed. I thought it said stops, like the live feed is stopped. I apologize. So essentially what we have to do is we have to, one, come up with solid concepts for this. Something that fits the entirety of the game, not something that we just throw onto the game like all these MMOs have been doing over the last 10 years. So what we need to do is come up with a concept and then make sure that our development team can actually create it. And that comes in the form of capability, of resources, manpower, the time necessary. In the reality of the development, and how everything plays out, this could be something that is ready to go a year and a half before launch, because everything just fell into place as we were creating these systems. And certain systems, we had a team that was really fluid at creating that system, so they opened up a lot of time. Well, what we're doing here is, instead of after every time a team creates a certain phase, we go into a series of meetings, we can now move right on into the next concept, because we've got all these meetings happening already, and the developers aren't being forced to attend these meetings. The developers are capable of doing what they love to do, what they're good at doing, creating what we want them to create, what the gamers want them to create. So it's one of the benefits of having our company structured the way that it's structured. So when it comes down to it, it could be not ready because there wasn't any time to do it, or if we're talking about releasing it with live launch, obviously the reality would be extending the launch date further than whatever our first anticipated launch date may be, in order to make sure that the ship combat is there. Or coming out to the audience and saying, look, it's not ready yet. Is it something you're willing to see come out after launch? Do you still want it to go with live launch when we push the date back? Or is it something you just say, screw it, let's put it out with the first expansion? And these are things that we're gonna do with you guys, and things that we want our community to be an absolute part of. There are business decisions that will be made regardless. Nothing that's going to sell us out. Don't worry about that. But things that the community doesn't really give a rat's ass about. But when it comes to certain elements like this, things where the players aren't just involved in the decisions, but it's really a part of what they're going to enjoy in the game, what's going to bring them to the game, repetitively coming back to the game, being able to immerse themselves in the game. I remember when the word immersion was considered a role player only term, and over the last 10 years people have really seen how difficult it is to have immersion and how important it is. So that's one of the things we want to make sure that every time we make one of these major decisions, it's not going to restrict immersion. So head over to the website, sacramentgame.com, click on the forums, head on over to the general discussions, find the topic you want, or all of them. I prefer all of them, and weigh in. Even if you don't have a vote or you don't care, vote. Let people know what your thoughts are. If you see a problem with it that might need to be addressed, throw it out there. We might not have even considered that option. We got some rather brilliant individuals here, but that doesn't mean that we're going to pick everything up. So, and that actually goes into the next topic that I'm going to talk about: transition. Threat swapping. So this is a mechanic that really only pertains to tanks, but it does in fact affect the entirety of the game. Every role, every aspect of the game. Especially since we're not absolutely sure what we're looking at for threat taunt capabilities in PvP yet. Tanks still have to perform their role. So Swotar, they had a different threat mechanic than we do, but they had a system where as long as you had a threat ability on a player, they did, like, I don't know, 30% reduced damage to anybody that wasn't the player that had threat on them. So it was something that people had to consider when tanks tossing around threat. And I got to the point where I was tossing around threat so much that players knew that they had to take me out first. They ignored the healer, ignored the DPS. They jumped me instantly, and I had great healers, so it was a bit of a fight for them. But based on the type of mechanic that we implement with the threat and how we go about doing it in PvP, it's going to be something that every player needs to be aware of. Because if I've got threat on you, let's say we have that mechanic. I'm not saying we're going to. Let's say, just for hypotheticals, that we have that mechanic where I put threat abilities on you and I'm developing threat against you. As a player, you can attack whoever you want. But having the highest amount of threat on you gives you some type of debuff against anybody that's not the tank. At that point, if I can swap that over to a completely different tank, we're talking about a kind of a potential for abuse there, right? If you have a freaking PvP raid full of tanks and they're just constantly swapping threat, you have no idea who has it, then we have to consider some type of countermans for this. Things like, and this is actually in the threat swapping if you read through it, things like putting a debuff on those who actually swap the threat, not being able to receive it back for X amount of time. Those that receive maybe can't toss it to another person for X amount of time. Just simple mechanics that would prevent stuff like that. And we, this is, if you read through it, this is clearly something that we've talked about, and we're excited about the idea. We are absolutely concerned with the potential for abuse. And that's, like I tell my team all the time, really what that comes down to is being creative and testing. Let's call it breaking, because it's reality. We don't want to go into alphas and betas with nobody breaking anything. We want everything broken so that we can see how it's going to break in real life. If it does break, if we still haven't addressed it, which, knock on wood, let's hope that don't happen. But how our team can respond to it, the type of creativity and ideas we can come up with to it. And in a lot of cases, preventative measures before live launch that we can put in place that we could say, I don't know how we overlooked that. That was clear. Somehow we overlooked that. That's an easy one to fix. Let's just do this. So When it comes down to it, this one right here is all about the testing is what it comes down to. So we got 4 votes on it so far. 3 for go for it, and 1 that says I want to see it in testing. That's mine. I absolutely want to see it in testing. I'm not an absolute go for it because of the hardcore players, min-max and freaks. I've seen them break some mechanics that were absolutely what were considered unbreakable. So I want to see them break these mechanics. I want them to be challenged, I want them to come in and break this game because they want a challenge, because they don't want the easy mode exploitable version of this game. And we've got a whole bunch of people in the works to be added to our alpha and beta list as far as people we know will absolutely destroy and dissect this game. So that doesn't mean that's all the people we're bringing. We want way more people. We want new testers, old testers, never tested before, don't even know what an MMO is. We want everybody in it because you're going to get different results and different people are going to break different things based on what their experiences is, what they know what to look for. You know, it's first time ever playing an MMO, that person may come across something that everybody else overlooked because it's just not what they do anymore. Maybe they don't check every corner, and maybe they don't look everywhere in the zone anymore. Maybe they just goal oriented, get from point A to point B, and that's it. So threat swapping, I think it's just myself and Dora commenting on it so far, but get over there, talk it up about threat swapping. Tell us what you think about the idea. Tell us what you think would be neat about the idea and what you think might be a potential problem with the idea. Again, it could be something you bring up that we would have never even considered. And I'd rather know now before beta and alpha so that when it comes to beta and alpha, we got all the simple things figured out and accounted for. So with the threat swapping mechanic, this is something we decided to go for. And this is really, credit goes to Adora for this idea. This was something that she had just kind of mentioned. And we throw ideas back and forth all the time. And a lot of times, most times, it sounds a lot more like, nah, that sounds kind of stupid. Hey, Ashley, hold on one sec. Hey, Ashley, go tell Steel Deal I'm recording, please. Thank you. So we're passing ideas all the time, and most times it's, I don't know, it's kind of stupid. How would that even work? Sometimes we can generate additional ideas or fixes that make that really sound viable at that point. This was one of the ones where we actually kind of liked the idea straight from the top. And, you know, being a tank for the last, I don't know, 5-6 years, because gamers can't, or games don't have the support roles or the CC roles that I really love. So tank's my other role. I don't heal, I don't DPS. It's not my bag of tea. Support I don't really do either, but with a CC primary and a secondary support, I can function that way. You know, like a regen or some type of buff to resist or something like that. The Bard class, basically. Those type of support roles where they're more of a short-term support, a real quick snap support, I can perform in those roles. So, fucking gumdrops. All right. Doesn't look like we've got any questions, but which is good because it's getting hot as hell in this room. Oh, I forgot to start with the state of the game. I apologize. So we'll jump on that right now. If you've got any questions, please ask away. It doesn't matter if it's about these topics or anything else at this point. There's not a million people watching yet, so you can ask any questions you want. A lot of the answers you'll find on our live website, as well as at if you go over to Isildra's stream and partake in what she's doing. Every other week, every other Monday, she does a release on the information that comes out every other Monday. So she does a podcast to go along with the information release. State of the game, flyover video. So we're putting together the flyover video. A lot of you know this. They've got the assets now. They've had the world for a little bit. We are working on getting the person who created the flyover. Can't record it, system doesn't function that way. So we're working on getting everything matching up. We've had a whole bunch of sinus infections and allergy related stuff in our development crew. It kind of sucks for them. It's been pretty hell for them the last, I don't know, 3-4 weeks almost. So they're working through that. We're fighting through that. And it is this entire staff is full volunteer. So I wouldn't anyway, but I can't run around swinging a whip, cracking it over people's backs or anything like that. Not that I would. I absolutely hate that kind of crap. But so the flyover video at this point in time may be delayed for a few weeks. So be ready for that. We were hoping to have it the end of this month, the end of August, but the reality of it is with sicknesses and time constraints and then meeting up to get things transferred over and whatnot, it's likely not going to happen the end of August. So that's not going to change anything. It'll still happen. It'll just be a little delayed. Forum life. So our forums, pretty much the same state as last week. We're building this game. The reality is for every 10,000 people that are on the forums, only about 100 of them communicate openly. Another 100 to 200 may reply to things being said by people, whether it's snarky, smart-ass remarks or actual beneficial input, constructive input. It really doesn't matter. And then a few others may kind of, like a post or say yes or vote here and there. So the reality is the forum life's not going to get rolling for another year or so, but that shouldn't keep you from jumping on and asking questions, because in a year when people start breathing up our forums and actually living up our forums, they can always reference your questions that you had. A lot of these newcomers, they'll be new at that point, and then after that they'll be new. And when it comes to that time when the game launches, and your questions are hidden way back, and it turns into a kind of a everybody asks the same question, it's one of them things we'll just pump up and put on and we don't have this right now just because we don't really have that many questions, but a frequently asked questions type ordeal. And you could be the person who brought that question forward. So social media life. It's moving. Facebook is moving again. Thank you, Adora, for that. She's breathed some new life into it, and I'm excited about that because Facebook is important. Twitter is important. I've got Check, who's going to help me out hopefully tomorrow with Reddit. My Skype failed on me when I sent him a message, so I haven't been able to set up a time tomorrow, and I've been really busy this week. We had a bit of a fun time this week. An important experience, we'll put it to you like that. So this week has been a little bogged down with other items. I know last Friday I said that we were going to have abilities up this week. I do apologize. I've been made a liar. It happens. It's going to happen. Technical issues, personal issues, business issues, these things are going to happen. So they will be up. They should absolutely be up this week. There's no reason why they can't be. It could be, over the period of the next 2 days. I'd love to see them up and running by Monday, but I'm not going to put that kind of pressure on our website team to do something that there might be something in the way of preventing it from happening. So I want to say it's going to be up this week. I absolutely want it to be up this week. I want you guys to be able to go into the 4 classes we've got and see what that's like. And I want the layout to exist from here on out so that every class will release every 2 weeks or every 4 weeks, sorry. We'll have abilities attached to it already. The design will be the same. You'll know exactly what you're looking at, and eventually have a type of skill calculator going on. So that's the goal with the abilities. Do we have any questions? Oh, Crave's got to work on his punctuation. All right, I'm going to wait for Vir Loki. I probably said that wrong. Almost sounds Russian. To ask his question before I move on. Just a quick put out there. We picked up a few new members. Roughly our growth, and this is a full volunteer force right now. Keep that in mind until we're funded and we can start paying full time. And then we really have to be picky on the type of people we bring in, because we don't want people who are here only for the money. We still want passionate people, whether they're getting paid or not. So, okay, Loki, gotcha. So if you've got any friends, wait, what was I saying? It's that brain. It's that brain. I just put it. If you got any friends who know anything about social media, send them my way. Honestly, if they absolutely love, Twitter and whatnot, and they're looking for something to do, love Facebook, love Reddit, send them my way. Tell them get your butt over there and work on an amazing project, and let the people know it exists because it's important. Uh, what else we got here? Closing remarks, but I'm going to wait on that for Loki's question. Yeah, so if you're here, ask the questions here. If it's middle of the week, you can save them up for the podcast on Friday, or you can ask them on the forums. The forums are pretty quick. We're talking about less than a 24-hour. Honestly, unless you post it in the middle of the night, nobody's awake, which usually somebody is. Usually it's less than 12 hours before somebody can respond to you. If it's one of them things where it's a direct question about a specific system that the people who see it don't know, they'll get in contact with the person who may. Class. Oh, yeah, thank you. The class data, for instance, Steve has the most knowledge about that. So when it comes to it, I can answer questions about it. Adora can answer questions about it. Double can answer questions about it. But Steve's really going to have that finite information about it. He's got the complete ideas on it, and the direction that he's pushing. We understand for the most part the direction, but I'm never going to try to fill his mouth with words. So. All right, I see the question. All right, so Loki asks, regarding threat swap, why does it need to be an ability sort of thing? Threat swapping the hard way has always been an interesting mechanic that really, really challenges tanks. I'm reminded of Velastra's in Vanilla WoW, where you had to have several tanks following each other in threat with no fanciness. That was one of the most fun fights to tank ever. I'm glad you asked that question. It doesn't have to be an ability. Um, the thing is with our game, if you haven't read up on the tank system yet, let me actually combat. I'm pretty sure. Nope. Yeah, let's go home because it's right here. So we just released the tank class or tank role concepts, but so certain things to note. That's not it. There we go. Is down here threat generation. So the threat generation in this game isn't like most games. Most games, it's attached to your damage output. In this game, that's not how threat generation is working. Threat generation is based more on the real life psychological event that happens in a fight. I've been in numerous amounts of fights, so I think I can absolutely weigh in on this. But there's plenty of psychological studies out there as well. If you've ever seen, a boxing match, there's all this psychological information that goes into a fight. And one of the things is to throw somebody off their game is to get inside their head. And this is true of sports, anything competitive really. If you can get inside somebody's head, you can screw with them. You can get them really pissed off. So what we're doing here is we're looking more for the tank to perform their role as a tank. So if you're a mitigation tank, not a mitigation tank, I apologize. If you're an avoidance tank, avoiding big hits is really going to piss that enemy off because he was excited about hitting you. He was pumped up for it, and it's the same feeling a player gets when they take that big swing and miss. What was it, Berserkers in Terra, I believe it was, where they had them big axes and they took them huge swings, and half the time they missed, and every time your buddy missed, you heard him on the mic just swearing up a storm. And it's the same kind of concept. So in our push to create NPCs that are a little more human, a little more realistic to the way that actual people would respond to situations, we wanted not only tanks to play their role as opposed to DPSing to generate threat. I don't like that. I want the DPS to do their job to generate threat. We wanted the tanks to play into what would really drive an NPC insane. The reality is the DPS actually would never win in a threat competition against a healer. So without turning our tanks into healers, what do? Well, we can't turn them into healers. So we take the next step. We evolve the threat system a little bit, and it's going to be different for some people, and it's going to feel a little weird at first for some people. But as these tanks are blocking damage, avoiding damage, while they're debilitating their targets, and they're doing what they do, the tanks are generating threat. The tanks are getting into the psyche of their opponent, which is the NPC, and infuriating them, distracting them, making them lose their focus on the fact that they want to kill and destroy everything, and now they're solely focused on you, yourself as the tank. What does this do for the old mechanics where you had to follow each other in tanking? Well, if you're not avoiding the big hits from the boss because the boss only delivers big hits to the tank, then how are you generating that threat? Yes, we've got threat abilities in your role type abilities, non-class based stuff that generates threat, absolutely. But these are not fillers. These are things that you're using to go along with your class abilities. Your class abilities are going to be where the most threat is generated. The class abilities are going to be where you soar ahead. If you've got a DPS and a tank standing side by side doing their threat abilities, and the tank, misses for a second, it could very well mean that when it's time to go, the tank doesn't have threat when it needs to be swapped. Most certainly, the tank who is actually taking the target, because they're utilizing class abilities as well in order to block these big damage attacks, is going to be miles ahead of the tank that isn't utilizing their class abilities to avoid this damage. Now, tanks could, block AoEs or avoid the damage from an AoE and irritate the mob. Sure, we could absolutely make that a thing, but it's still not going to be enough. It's not going to compare to the constant barrage of damage output going on by the primary target. So the threat and threat swapping work absolutely different in this game. We're still talking about different ways to make it possible, and one of them is the threat swap mechanic. We could make it function in a way that the person you're swapping to has to be within X amount of percent of total of the highest threat, or X amount of percent of your threat in order to swap it. And that would still provide a little bit of that need to stay in range of kind of setting. But where we start running into issues there is, what about the tanks who get off that boss and go off tank stuff? They don't have threat on that target anymore because they're off tanking other things. And that's the other key here. Something that I almost completely missed was, tanks are never just going to be standing there nipping at the heels of a target that's being tanked by another guy. Every tank in the raid is going to be busy. If you're bringing too many tanks to the raid, and we're not giving you something to do with every character that you bring to the raid, that's on us. We overlook something important, and that's not what we want. If you just so happen to be bringing too many tanks to the raid, then at that point, that's on you. If you bring, let's say, a 36-player raid, you decide you want to bring 10 tanks, it's probably going to be a little too many. Probably going to be a little too many tanks. And at that point, you're going to have tanks who are really doing nothing but building up threat for whatever reason, even if they never wind up tanking the fight. So there's a lot of things to consider in this system with the way that we do threat generation, which is laid out on the website. And the primary consideration is that we need to find a way to not swap threat, but be able to replace one tank with the next in the event that it happens. Or in the event that a tank dies, we can't afford the raid to wipe just because we didn't have anything in place for players to pick up threat on that. Now, you talk about you can use snap mechanics and all this other stuff, and these are conversations we'll absolutely have. But I'd like to see something a little bit more involved, something that's not a snap mechanic, because snap mechanics they're boring as shit. As a tank myself, make them lock onto you for 3 seconds isn't really something that I like. I like fighting for my threat, not having it applied to me for an X amount of seconds just because I hit an ability. So go on the forums and post your question. Post any concerns you've got with the threat mechanics. Let other people see, because there might be somebody else who sees that and agrees with that. And I'm not going to say that whether or not they do, we're not going to regard it as a serious question. It's always a serious question. Everything is a serious question when it comes to gamers asking about the games, because the gamers see games the way they are, as opposed to developers seeing games the way they were made. And there's a massive difference between the two. Final Fantasy XIV was a great example of that. So thank you for the question. I hope that answered your question. I hope that gave you a little bit of insight to what our thought process is at this point. And maybe breed more conversation from it. Not to shut you down. That's not the point. Because I would love to have a counter to that. Well, what if you did this? Well, okay, well, then what about this? Well, what if you did this? Considering all three of these elements, now I think they might work. So do we still want to do threat swapping? Yes or no? Well, yeah, but what if we do it like this? I mean, you can see how the chain of events happens and how a simple concept turns into an entire mechanic that it's new. I don't really give a shit about fresh. It's a newer, evolved mechanic that makes more sense for the entirety of the game as opposed to just using what's already been there. And I just don't want to go into tanks having a DPS to hold threat. I fucking absolutely hate it. I don't think I can say how much I hate that. I think the DPS should perform the DPS, the tank should mitigate damage, the healers should replenish health, the support should buff everybody, and the CC should take care of anything that doesn't need to get nibbled on right away. Absolutely. I love concept conversations. And it might turn out to something where we can stream some of our concept conversations if you guys are interested in being a part of those. And I have no problem with that. Instead of waiting for the questions, or after the questions, we start putting together ideas and complexities and start going through, and we can stream it, and you can join in with us while we talk about the good and bad points of everything, what the plan is, what the outcome might be, stuff like that. So that's definitely something we can consider, and I will I'll actually post a question, see if you guys even care about that kind of stuff. Most people don't really care about concept design. They only care about the creation of the game. So okay, so in closing, people outside yelling, crazy kids. Make sure you subscribe to our website. Head over to sacramentgame.com. Subscribe to the website. At the same time, at the top on the far right, still ain't figured out how this works. On the far right side of the screen is the forums. You will need to subscribe to those as well. We are using a third-party service for that. It's not directly attached to the forums, so it's not the same subscription as the forums. Oh, people are crazy. I'm about to go out there and wave them down later. On the website, you can also sign up to volunteer your time. If you have any talents or anything that you think would be a talent, click on the donate button, scroll down here to the Sacrament Volunteer Interest Form. There are so many jobs when it comes to creating an MMO that people aren't even aware of. It's not just development. It's not just CEOs. It is not just testers. There is counterparts and counterparts and counterparts. If you've got a talent, or a degree, even if you're not talented, you're just good at it because you got a degree and you understand it, whatever. If you've got something that you feel you can absolutely contribute and you want to contribute to this amazing beast that we're calling a video game, click on the link, fill out the form. We'll get a response over to you as soon as possible. Sometimes it takes a few days. Sometimes it's instantaneous. It just depends on when I have a few minutes to check over the form. And it's not a form that gets updated a lot. We get about one new volunteer every week. Some weeks it's 4. Some weeks, I think we've only had like 2 or 3 weeks, it's none. But it's we got a healthy amount of people who are coming into this project passionate and excited about it. So head on over to our Facebook page. It's Facebook Sacrament New Gods, I believe it is. I think I closed my Facebook down. I did. I closed my Facebook down, but it's Sacrament New Gods. If you go over to the website, actually, I don't even have to tell you. It should be, where is it, at the bottom? Yeah, right here. So Facebook, Twitter, Google+, I don't know what this is, Reddit, which we're working on, and then email. So the Reddit account exists. I don't have any freaking clue how Reddit works. Check's going to spool me up on that and school me up and teach me a lot of stuff. So so we can get that rolling. I couldn't tell you the first thing about Reddit. I tried it. I don't understand it. I think it's too intelligent for me. I'm just not intelligent enough for Reddit. It could be a thing, or I'm not hateful enough. One of the two. There's a lot of hate on Reddit, so, whew. So yeah, so go over to our Facebook, like our Facebook page, show some love, and share a couple of these posts that we put out there that you enjoy. Get your friends involved. Follow us on Twitter. You can follow us on Twitter as well. That is at Sacrament Game. It's constantly rolling with information. It's constantly going with tweets. So get on out there. Tell your friends about it. And I believe that's it. Yep, Sacrament New Guys. I knew it. I knew it was Sacrament New Guys. So thank you for coming. Crave, remind me to make you a mod before we go. Crave, remind me to make you a mod before we go. I keep forgetting to key in when I'm talking to you two. And I said nothing. Let's find out. Let's find out what we're looking at next week. Next week, we're going over tier 10 through tier 15 rating. Currently, we're only doing tier 16 plus. It's a lot of raids. So right now, I believe it's like 90 fights, and that's not including the additional raids in tier 20 that we added. So 12 times 3, what was that, 48? So yeah, about 100, 130-ish fights already. And that's just bosses. That's not the stuff in between. And then crafting mentors. Right now, you know, you get to master one craft, but we were looking at an idea. It just kind of came to me about being able to mentor somebody who's already got a craft above tier 10, not at tier 10, but above tier 10, and you can mentor any other craft up to tier 10. So you can have one master craft and then a few sub crafts essentially. So. But these are the discussions for next week. Thank you for showing up. I hope you tune in. I hope you enjoyed what you watched. If you got any critiques, by all means, send them over to the forums as well. I'm always looking to do a better job at this. Eventually, I would love to have somebody who actually knows what the hell they're doing here to do this. I'm told just be me. I'm also told me is an asshole. So I'm not sure I'm the best person to be me on Twitter. If you guys enjoy it, you enjoy it. Who am I to say, you sadistic sons of bitches? Anyways, have fun.